The Portal Half-Life connected universe is one of my favorite fictional universes of all time. Whether it be for the cleverness and intricacies of the game's writing, the likability and connectivity of its characters, or their creative approaches to puzzle solving through both level and weapon design, both of these wonderful series bring something special and unique to the table in their own separate yet similar ways. While I am slightly more of a fan of the former than the latter, I still hold as great of a deal of love for the Half-Life series as I do for the Portal series. But what might surprise you about my relationship with these two games is that for me, it has one unique trait which separates it from the numerous other fans of the franchise. That being, I only got into the game which is the topic of this video because of Portal. That's right, Portal got me into Half-Life. Normally, with most fans of the series, it is entirely the other way around, but in my case, I was a special exception. I had been aware of Portal's existence for most of my life, even long before I actually played it, but it wasn't until I started getting into the series and really digging into its lore that I discovered there was a whole nother connecting series which overlapped with it. Naturally, I became incredibly fascinated by this discovery, and craving more exciting content from a universe which had given me so much inspiration and joy, I dug so deep into it that I found myself getting completely absorbed by that world as well. However, once I was finally given the opportunity to experience it for myself, thanks to a generous gift from my father of the legendary video game collection, the Orange Box, I wasn't totally sure what to expect from it. This would be my first time ever delving into the M-rated FPS genre of video games, and as such, I was slightly nervous that I might not be able to handle it well, because I have often displayed great sensitivity towards things like extreme violence, as well as blood and gore. But my shakiness regarding those aspects of the game was far outweighed by an even greater desire to experience its story, and discover whether or not the game truly lived up to the hype. And I am very pleased to say that it did. Although, not initially, however. I really did like the game when I first played it about a year ago, but in all honesty, it was the game's 20th anniversary update on Steam which catapulted it up to favorite status for me. Not only did Valve make it so that all of the Half-Life 2 installments were bundled in one game, similar to what the Orange Box had done years before, but the studio even generously threw in tertiary titles like Half-Life 2 Deathmatch and Lost Coast for free to celebrate the momentous occasion. But the cherry on top of this glorious cake was the added Steam Workshop support for the game. Thanks to this new addition, Half-Life 2 became a game which was much more easily moddable. Now, people were able to either add or download as many mods to and from the workshop as their hearts desired, or their PC permitted, to experience the game in a whole new way. This was by far my favorite addition from the anniversary update. Not only was downloading and using all the mods I wanted for the game a thrilling experience in its own right, but the extent to which I was able to change certain things about the game, like its character models, certain graphics, weapons, enemy types, etc., helped me begin to appreciate base Half-Life 2 so much more. It caused me to reflect upon what I had discovered and experienced from my first run of the game, and how that subconsciously affected and enhanced my perception of it with each consecutive playthrough. Not only did those aforementioned more violent aspects of the game turn out to be much less violent than I had anticipated, but more importantly, the masterful story and world building of the game managed to thoroughly hook me in and blow me away, proving that all the praise and admiration this game has been given in the 20 years since its release has truly been deserved. In my eyes, Half-Life 2 is truly one of the best story-based video games that I have ever experienced in my life. While it is a game which does err on the more violent side of things, its brand of immersive storytelling and setting development make it an engaging experience unlike nearly any other within its genre. One that is still memorable even after nearly 2 decades since its release. This game is 21 years old, and it still holds up remarkably well, even by today's rigorous standards for graphics and gameplay. But at this point, you likely already knew that. Pretty much every major YouTube channel which covers video games has talked about the Half-Life series in some form or fashion, explaining why it works so well in better and greater detail than I ever could. So to inject my point of view on this wonderful game in a more unique way, minimizing the risk of saying something that's already been said before, I've chosen to analyze a smaller yet no less important fragment of Half-Life 2, the game's opening sequence. In this video, I intend to break down why its opening works so well, how it immerses the player within the world it's set in, and how it serves as a perfect starting chapter to the game it's from. So without further ado, let's get started! Our story begins within the confines of a dark, blank void. From the shadows, the face of a certain familiar individual emerges, the G-Man. After having reluctantly accepted the G-Man's offer of employment in the last game, under the circumstances of being given the choice of either that or death, Gordon Freeman now finds himself awoken from the state of suspended animation he was placed in, on account of the G-Man being in need of his services once more. In the wake of Gordon's absence, a new and far greater evil has taken hold and established its dominion over Earth, the Combine. For the rest of the world, 20 long, hard years have passed since that fatal day which brought doom to the world, but from Gordon's perspective, it's only been about 2 days since then. A few days ago, he was fighting to push back an invasion from the border world of Zen, led by the great alien telepath the Nihilanth, and had even managed to end his campaign. But unbeknownst to him, the outcome both he and his fellow scientists at Black Mesa had hoped to achieve from defeating the creature never came to pass. No, rather than sealing the rift between the dimensions of Earth and Zen, the annihilation of the Nihilanth only widened the gap between those worlds, giving way to a full-scale invasion of the planet by the Combine. Alas, the Earth proved to be no match for the otherworldly and incomprehensible might of the alien invaders, and in a measly 7 hours, the collective resources of the planet had fallen entirely under their control. Now it falls upon Gordon's shoulders to liberate the planet and return the world to its rightful state. Having given Gordon a brief yet cryptic explanation of his role to play in the upcoming uprising, G-Man sees to it that Gordon reaches his destination in City 17 by rail line, and soon after, Gordon finds their conversation within the void cut off, as he is teleported onto a train. From there, Gordon encounters 2 passengers, one who remarks,
"I didn't see you get on,"
and another who tells him that,
"No matter how many times I've been relocated, I get used to it."
What this does is put a sense of both sympathy and unease for both the citizen and the world which the player is about to enter into. Not only do we feel sorry for this background character who's been forced to constantly move from one place to another, but more importantly, we begin to ask the question of why. Why has he been forced to move? For what reason? But for now, these questions will have to be pondered at a later date, as the train has finally reached its destination and it is time for us to depart. Upon exiting the train, we are met with 2 equally evocative pieces of imagery occurring within seconds of each other. The first of these is the face of an older and seemingly warm man being broadcast on a big screen welcoming us to City 17, followed by a Combine scanner taking a picture of our face with a blinding flash, no doubt intended to ID both ourselves and all incoming new arrivals to the city. Upon listening to said older man, we are actually given an answer to the question posed by our interaction with that one citizen just a few seconds ago. In his welcoming speech, the man mentions that
you have chosen or been chosen to relocate to one of our finest remaining urban centers.
Meaning that the decision to move from one city to another is not always a decision a citizen can make voluntarily, but is far more often a Combine-mandated order. Now from this point, the player is expected to turn left, but they're also given the choice to turn right before continuing on their journey. Choosing to do so allows us to witness yet another striking scene, a Vortigaunt doing janitorial work in the train station. For anyone who has a history with the Half-Life series, this moment comes as a major shock. Seeing the aliens who Gordon tore through like cannon fodder in the last game, having assimilated into this new world, triggers a somewhat visceral feeling in the mind of the player, as now truly things aren't like they were before at all. But in time, they soon come to accept it, as the Vortigaunts prove to be invaluable allies. Moving on from there, however, we come across the first scene we're actually meant to see at the start of our journey. A not-so-friendly interaction between a civilian and a Metro cop. Let's listen in on their conversation.
But this stuff, it's all I have left. Alright, I'm moving. Jeez.
So what this shows us is further proof that the ordinary populace living under the Combine's rule really do not have many rights or privileges, if any at all. They're not even allowed their own personal possessions. Following this display of injustice, we then walk up to a revolving gate where another citizen, this time a female, calls out to us, asking,
Were you the only ones on that train?
If you choose to interact with her, she elaborates upon her question to you by explaining that
Overwatch stopped our train in the woods and took my husband for questioning. They said he'd be on the next train. I'm not sure when that was. They're being nice, though, letting me wait for him.
despite the fact that this woman's somewhat cautious optimism in the face of the Combine's cruelty and brutality is admirable, the sad reality is, it's based upon a false hope. The unfortunate truth is that this woman's husband is more than likely dead, having been killed by the soldiers that took him. Or worse, the man she's waiting for is never coming back. From this point, the player quickly finds themselves walking down a dark hallway into another part of the station, no doubt intended to serve as the border checkpoint between the outside world and City 17. In here, there are several different NPCs the player can interact with, each with their own unique sets of dialogue that provide even more hints about what life is like under the Combine's rule. Let's take a listen in to all of them, starting with this litterbug.
Don't drink the water. They put something in it to make you forget. I don't even remember how I got here.
My administration
It's on, but they're always
so
departing, but they never
thoughtfully
arrive.
provided by our
And the ones that do
benefactor.
arrive, they never leave.
I've been proud to
You never see
call
them go.
City
They're always
17
full. No
my
one
home.
ever gets on, but they're
And
always
so,
they're
whether
always
you are
departing,
here
but they
to
never
stay
arrive.
or passing
And the ones that do
through
arrive,
on your
they
way
never
to
leave.
parts unknown,
You never see them go. They're always
Welcome
full. No one
to
ever
City
gets on,
17.
but they're always
It's safe
departing,
here.
but they never arrive. And the ones that do arrive, they never leave. I see they took your suitcase too. They can't get away with this much longer. I'm working up the nerve to go on. Dr. Breen again? I was hoping I'd seen the last of him in City 14. I wouldn't say that too loud. This is his base of operations.
So quite a bit of information to unpack from all these quotes, huh? From each of these interactions with these citizens, more and more pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. We learn that the Combine are likely drugging the water supply so that citizens don't have the mental capacity to think critically and clearly, that the city's trains are always leaving full of people but never coming back, and we get further proof that the Combine seizure of people's personal property is a common practice of theirs, and wasn't just an isolated incident that we saw earlier. We even get a name for the mysterious man we've seen appearing on all the screens throughout the game so far, Dr. Breen, and discover how his image is regularly broadcast to the Earth's population around the globe, perhaps hinting that he has greater power than we had at first realized. Having taken all of this in, we then proceed to move through the checkpoint gate. But just as we do, we come across both a very interesting sight and sound. Another Metro cop giving orders to a civilian, only his voice sounds completely different to all the others.
Welcome. Welcome to City 17. You have chosen or been...
In the moment you think, that's a bit weird, but you don't really question it because your mind is much more concerned with what's going to happen to you if you're not allowed to pass through the checkpoint and enter City 17. And sure enough, your fears were not unfounded. Not only are you not allowed to pass through the main gate and into the plaza, and instead are ordered to head off to the left, where the security room and a passage to a mysterious place called Nova Prospect are, but you are once again greeted by camera flashes with the purpose of IDing you. This is a very bad sign. Suddenly, the door in front of you swings open, and out steps that very same Metro cop with the unique voice you encountered earlier. He says to you, "You citizen, come with me," and you follow him down the hall into an interrogation room. Now you're really scared. On the way over, you come across another one of the interrogation rooms, and if you wait just a few seconds before continuing into the room you're supposed to be in, you can catch a glimpse of another citizen being interrogated for some infraction related to his presence within the city, which he claims must be a mistake, as he has
a standard relocation coupon just like everybody else.
Before you can continue listening in on their conversation, though, the Metro cop interrogating him comes over and closes the window cover, forcing you to move on. The Metro cop you've been following then knocks on the door to the room where he intends to take you, and after another unit confirms his identity, you both are buzzed through. Upon entering the room, you come across a torture chair with bloodstains on the floor all around it. Panic quickly sets in. By now you have some idea of how horrific the Combine's treatment of its citizens is, so what are they going to do to you? As the guard escorting you persuades the other to exit, since he requires no further help from here, he orders you to back up, and then proceeds to disable all the security cameras in the room, as he needs
some privacy for this.
But just as it looks like things are about to get ugly and Gordon is about to meet a grisly demise, the Metro cop takes off his mask and reveals a surprise.
About that beer I owed you. It's me, Gordon, Barney from Black Mesa.
This is no Metro cop, but your old friend Barney Calhoun, who's come to rescue you. Working undercover within civil protection, Barney has made efforts to gain inside information to use against the Combine, and protect both ordinary citizens and allies to his cause from the Combine's wrath. Though unfortunately he won't be able to give you that beer like he promised in the last game.
Hey, catch me later, I'll buy you a beer.
Right now, that doesn't really matter to you, because he's just saved your life from reaching an untimely end. But before you even have a chance to truly express your gratitude, Barney switches on the computer in the room to contact another old friend from Black Mesa, Dr. Kleiner. Kleiner is both thrilled and a bit surprised to be face to face with his former co-worker again once more, stating that he
expected more warning.
To which Barney himself replies that he was equally surprised by this as well, adding that he was fortunate enough to save Gordon before
He was about to board the express to Nova Prospect.
giving more context clues about what that area off to the side with the sign labeled Nova Prospect actually was, and generating further questions in the mind of the player about what that place itself might actually be. Kleiner then asks Barney what he intends to do now that Gordon is in his care, to which Barney states that he's still trying to figure that out. Isaac then suggests helping him to find someone named Alex who could lead Gordon to his current location. Barney seems to agree with this idea, adding that,
Well, as long as he stays away from checkpoints, we should be okay.
before cutting their conversation short so as not to blow his cover. Before we continue with this scene, something I would really like to point out about this whole exchange between Barney and Kleiner is how it fundamentally changes the two of them as characters. In the original Half-Life, Barney and Kleiner were just the generic security guard and scientist NPCs you'd see multiple times throughout the game. In fact, they didn't even have true names, being listed in the game's files as just Monster_Barney and Scientist_01. The expansion Half-Life Blue Shift expanded upon Barney somewhat, adding his surname Calhoun, but it's arguable that neither he nor Kleiner truly became individual, fleshed-out characters until this game. Thanks to this game, Barney and Kleiner are no longer just random clone NPCs you would see throughout the story, but genuine, standalone characters with their own unique personalities who each have vital roles to play in the story. Anyway, getting back to the scene itself, now that our little discussion with Kleiner has come to an end, Barney tells us that it's up to us now to make our own way to his lab. Suddenly, just as he feared, there's a knock on the door from another cop, prompting Barney to open the room's back door so we can make our escape. After we run through that door, Barney then instructs us on how to leave the room, telling us to
Pile up some stuff to get through that window and keep going till you're in the plaza.
adding that,
I'll meet up with you later.
as we climb up the ladder leading up to the window, the door shuts behind us and leaves the player to their merry task. And what an easy task it is! All you have to do is pick up one of the boxes, put it just below that window, and use it to hop out, where another box breaks your fall, allowing you to land safely on the ground below. Something interesting to note about this section, however, is that during playtesting, Valve was concerned it could turn into an issue for the player. But how, you ask? How could something as easy and straightforward as picking up a box and using it to jump through a window be a problem for the player? Well, by itself, it works just fine. But what if the player either misunderstands the instructions, or just decides to goof off by choosing to throw all the boxes out the window? Now granted, there is a very slim chance of something like that happening, but what can you do to prevent such an eventuality from occurring without making serious changes to the design of the level? Changes that could potentially be game-breaking without proper tweaking, and right before the game's launch, no less. Well, as Valve developer Robin Walker puts it, sometimes a more conservative fix instead of an elegant one is all you need. Allow me to demonstrate. As you can see, if the player tries to throw all the boxes out of the window, there will always be one last box which continually regenerates, until they finally exit the building. Such a clever fix for something which would seem like a non-issue for most players, but it just goes to show how much love and care was poured into the game as a whole. No small detail escaped Valve's gaze. Everything mattered to them. And that's one of the reasons why this game still holds up very well, even after nearly 2 decades. Getting back to the part of the game at hand, however, once you've made it to the outside, you head back inside to another part of the station, entering through one door, walking up a small flight of stairs, and then heading through a second door. From there, you come across yet another Metro cop walking over towards a garbage bin in front of a gate. Suddenly, without warning, he knocks off a wayward can on top of the garbage bin with his stun stick and tells you to... In other words, he's telling you to clean up his mess. And to make it worse, he won't move out of the way until you do so. Now there's 2 choices you can make here. You can either choose to do as the officer says and put the can back into the garbage, or you can instead choose to throw the can at him in defiance, and if you time it right, weave around him while he's chasing you to make a quick break for the exit door. Both decisions award you with an achievement. I personally always like to do the latter, because not only is it a satisfying way to get some payback for the various acts of police brutality they've been committing throughout the game thus far, but it's also just funny to try and evade their clutches by hopping away from them. Although, doing so does prevent you from taking in another key detail of the game, involving the citizens in line at what used to be a ticket booth in order to get their meager rations of food. If you choose to interact with one or more of the citizens, they may drop a line about how they're
I'm ready to join civil protection just to get a decent meal.
Demonstrating that certain privileges are awarded only to those who enlist within the Combine's own ranks, although this is merely a facade. In reality, everyone who lives under the Combine's rule is a slave of some kind to them. With all that out of the way, however, the player then exits through the 2 double doors into the plaza, where they finally enter the streets of the city, only to find yet another giant screen with Breen's face on it, as well as several Combine gates blocking off the paths to the north, west, and northeast areas of City 17 to Gordon. While walking around the plaza, if the player tries to interact with any of the civilians walking by, they'll all tell us in one way or another that we can't be seen talking to each other, as they're out in the open and don't want to potentially get into any trouble. And, if you try to enter through any of these gates, Gordon's identity will always be rejected, and he will not be granted access, forcing him to head through the correct path off to the west. As we continue off on the correct path on our journey, we are once again met with some very eye-catching sights. 2 of them, in fact. The first of these is a Metro cop blocking the door to a building where a bunch of his fellow officers are holed up, no doubt performing an investigation of some kind. The door and the cop himself are obscuring the entrance somewhat, but it's still crystal clear to the player that's what's going on. The next thing we come across after this is 2 Metro cops standing right next to a Combine armored personnel carrier guarding another wall, while this gigantic synthetic organism lumbers past, followed by an accompanying city scanner. This immediately creates both a sense of fear and curiosity within the player, as not only are they supremely intimidated by the scale and enormity of the creature, but also intrigued by its unique alien design, causing them to wonder whether this will be the last time we ever see this thing, or if it will ever crop up later. Progressing from there, however, we soon realize that there is, once again, no way through the gate, so we must instead head back over to where we first saw that ladder on the side of a building, climb up and over a connecting fire escape, and land into a back alley, where we can see more human suffering at the hands of the Combine and its innocent civilians being arrested by the CPs. Don't get too close to the Metro Police though, otherwise they'll turn aggressive and attack you. Turning around from there, you encounter 2 citizens standing outside of a building talking about the Combine's policies on search and seizure. Let's listen in.
This is how it always starts. First the building, then the whole block. They have no reason to come to our place. Don't worry, they'll find one.
So what this proves to us is that the Combine can and will raid any building, anytime, any place, anywhere, even if they don't have much of a probable cause for doing so. The phrase, unreasonable search and seizure, means nothing to them. Now from here, the player is supposed to go straight and head into an open door inside a building off to the left, but there's an optional detour we're allowed to take that involves exploring around the adjacent playground. You may ask yourself, why would we want to waste our time at a playground of all places? Shouldn't we be getting on with more important things? And yes, you do raise a good point, but this segment of the game contains a very important hidden secret which ties in with a critical detail of the plot. Going over and interacting with the tic-tac-toe panel causes the player to hear the joyous screams and laughter of children. In fact, even an old abandoned baby doll can be found there lying on the ground. It's almost as if the playground is actually speaking to us, trying to communicate its distant, happier memories from a lifetime ago. What this does is create a very visceral feeling of intrigue within the player. In their mind, they begin to ask the question of, if this playground has been abandoned and left to rot for so long, when it seemed like so many children absolutely loved coming here, what must have happened for it to enter this state of neglect? Why are there no children here? Well, the answer to that can actually be found in an earlier segment of the game. If you were paying any attention at all to Breen's broadcasts, or Breencasts as the game likes to call them, you may have noticed this line.
Allow me to address the anxieties underlying your concerns, rather than try to answer every possible question you might have left unvoiced. First, let us consider the fact that for the first time ever, as a species, immortality is in our reach. This simple fact has far-reaching implications. It requires radical rethinking and revision of our genetic imperatives. It also requires planning and forethought that run in direct opposition to our neural presets. I find it helpful at times like these to remind myself that our true enemy is instinct. Instinct was our mother when we were an infant species. Instinct coddled us and kept us safe in those hardscrabble years when we hardened our sticks and cooked our first meals above a meager fire and started at the shadows that leapt upon the cavern's walls. But inseparable from instinct is its dark twin, superstition. Instinct is inextricably bound to unreasoning impulses, and today we clearly see its true nature. Instinct has just become aware of its irrelevance, and like a cornered beast, it will not go down without a bloody fight. Instinct would inflict a fatal injury on our species. Instinct creates its own oppressors and bids us rise up against them. Instinct tells us that the unknown is a threat rather than an opportunity. Instinct slyly and covertly compels us away from change and progress. Instinct, therefore, must be expunged. It must be fought tooth and nail, beginning with the basest of human urges, the urge to reproduce. We should thank our benefactors for giving us respite from this overpowering force. They have thrown a switch and exorcised our demons in a single stroke. They have given us the strength we never could have summoned to overcome this compulsion. They have given us purpose. They have turned our eyes toward the stars. Let me assure you that the suppressing field will be shut off on the day that we have mastered ourselves, the day we can prove we no longer need it. And that day of transformation, I have it on good authority, is close at hand.
So what this reveals to us is that the Combine have installed a device known as a suppression field in order to prevent the human race from ever reproducing again, effectively making all of Earth's population impotent. What this means is that all of the people we have encountered thus far in this game are part of the last human generation. And the reason why children no longer come to that playground anymore? It's because there are no children anymore. This, more than anything else, is what I truly believe makes the player hate the Combine. Because above all else, they are seeing to it that humanity effectively dies out, so they are free to suck all of the planet's resources completely dry and leave the Earth a hollow husk of its once proud self, before moving on and doing exactly the same to the next planet they conquer. It's truly sickening stuff. It does an excellent job of making us loathe and despise those who we are meant to be fighting against, while feeling nothing but sorrow and empathy for those who are living underneath their boot, making us desperately desire to do anything we can to improve their plight and erase this horrible situation. Now truly beginning to grasp the horrors of the Combine's reign, we continue on our journey by heading into that building mentioned earlier. Traveling up a long, winding staircase, we immediately come across 3 Metro cops standing outside a door in this apartment complex, one of which raps on the door several times before one of his buddies kicks it open, at which point 2 of them rush in for a raid, while 1 stands out and guards. He's blocking our path, so we'll have to turn back and enter through one of the other apartments. Upon entry of said apartment, we are greeted by a severely inebriated citizen, who asks us if we were the ones knocking on that door, believing it was his, before adding he didn't even know they still had one anymore. And as a matter of fact, there is no longer a door there. This goes to show how civil protection raids on the homes of innocent civilians are so frequent that they are practically a common occurrence within City 17. No one's free to have their own sense of privacy, nor is anyone truly above suspicion. Leaving the man to his drink, we then enter another part of the room where we see 2 more citizens looking out the windows for more MetroCop patrols, while in the background, a TV monitor continues to play Breen's Breencasts. Upon walking up to them, the male is at first startled, but then relieved to see that we are in fact not a cop, but merely an ordinary human being like the rest of them, as the adjacent female points out. Joining them in their window watching, we immediately see that just as the 2 had suspected, more CP units have arrived to sweep the building, signaling to us that it's time to make our escape. But before we do, however, we're given the option to walk into yet another apartment room, where we come across a husband gently comforting his deeply upset wife in an effort to help them both stay strong through this trying time. Nothing's shown here that we didn't already know before, but I do feel this consoling couple do bear mentioning, as they turn out to be recurring characters in the series, seen again in both Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Now that we've seen these 2 though, it really is time for us to go. As we turn to exit the building, running as fast as we can up the stairwell, an eerie voice line from the Combine's AI system known as Overwatch is suddenly triggered. Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Attention, residents. Miscounts detected in your block. Cooperation with your civil protection team. Permits full ration reward.
So what this indicates to the player is that Gordon has stumbled into a wrong place at a very wrong time. Having entered a building in which he has not registered as a tenant immediately indicates to the Combine that something is amiss and alerts them to our presence. To make matters worse, they may have already deduced our identity as the one and only Freeman, and are now keen to snuff it out, as they know what a threat to their power we are. Those Metro cops you saw pulling into the building from outside earlier? They're here for only one person. You. Now, we really have to hurry. With little time left to spare, we continue to hurry up the stairs and quickly encounter another civilian attempting to aid our escape by granting us passage through his room. As we continue to flee from the civil protection units closing in on us, he quickly tells us to
head for the roof.
Adding that,
There's no time to lose.
As more Metro cops burst into the room and attack while in hot pursuit of us. There's little we can do to help at this point, so we just have to keep running. Then, as we approach yet another stairwell, several Metro cops appear on the lower flight with their stun sticks drawn and give chase. Things are getting really tense now, and time is truly of the essence. But luckily, before they can manage to catch up to us, another Good Samaritan holds the door open for us and shuts it in front of them, barricading the door while we continue to make our escape. Now, we've finally made it to the roof, but we're far from out of the woods yet. As we run across several rooftops to make our getaway, not only can we see a gunship in the sky above and scanners floating around nearby, but far more pressing, gunfire from the Metro Police down below, which we must deftly dodge as we make our way across the ever-narrowing scaffolding. Finally coming across a rooftop connected to an open window, we jump through the window and into the new building. But just when we think we're finally safe, as we head down the small staircase, which conveniently collapses right underneath us, boom! The Metro cops kick in the door right in front of us. We quickly turn around to try and run away, but boom! They kick in the door right behind us too! We are completely surrounded and at their mercy, with no possible hope of escape. But just when it seems as though we have met a very grim fate, this happens.
Over here! Ha! No, you don't!
Dr. Freeman, I presume.
We are saved by none other than Alex Vance. Having been alerted to Freeman's presence earlier by Dr. Kleiner, Alex had been keeping a close eye upon us to both protect us and ensure our safety in arriving at Kleiner's lab. As we board the elevator with Alex to head down to the lab, she mentions to us how her father used to work with Gordon back in Black Mesa, and makes a clever remark about how Gordon is,
Man, a few words.
in reference to the fact that the player's character never physically speaks within the game. Stepping off the elevator, we then follow Alex over to a wall with a bright yellow propaganda poster of Dr. Breen on it. Here, not only do we learn that he clearly holds a high rank of honor within the Combine's New World Order, based upon his lofty stature depicted in the poster, as well as some shared history between him and Gordon.
Remember him from Black Mesa? Your old administrator. Don't get my dad started on Dr. Breen.
Having explained all this to the audience, Alex then proceeds to interact with the power box attached to the wall, opening up the secret door hidden within it. Proceeding onwards from there, we follow Alex all the way through this secret passageway, while she reveals an interesting piece of information about the Lambda Resistance's operations.
We've been helping people escape the city on foot. It's a dangerous route to my father's lab, through the old canals. Today, we're finally on the verge of having a better way.
Despite the fact that this little piece of exposition might not seem like it's that important to the story overall, it will actually become so for the player themselves later, as you'll soon find out. With introductions and explanations out of the way, Alex then jokingly remarks,
Here, let me buy you a drink.
Revealing that the vending machine seen in front of them is actually the secret door into Kleiner's lab. Having had all the right buttons pressed, the door swings open, and at last we are able to step inside. Upon entering, we are finally given a true glimpse at what Dr. Kleiner really looks like in the flesh, coming across him while he appears to be searching for something. Let's take a listen.
Blast that little... Where did she get to? Lamar, come out of there!
Uh-oh, everything all right, Dr. Kleiner?
Oh, hello, Alex. Well, almost all right. Lamar has gotten out of her crate again. If I didn't know better, I'd suspect Barney of trapping and... My goodness. Gordon Freeman. It really is you, isn't it?
I found him wandering around outside. Bit of a troublemaker, isn't he?
We owe a great deal to Dr. Freeman, even if trouble does tend to follow in his wake.
After having temporarily paused his search to greet us in person, Dr. Kleiner mentions something about a resurrected teleport to us while in conversation. Upon hearing this, you think, that's intriguing, but you don't give it a ton of thought right away, as you're just beginning to take in all that you're currently seeing inside Kleiner's lab. I mean, this is the Resistance base, for crying out loud. There's all kinds of stuff around you. Everything from tanks of strange liquid, to security cameras, to an even smaller scale teleporter, to little pieces of machinery strewn all over the place. But just as you're beginning to soak in all these new sights and sounds, Barney suddenly strolls in and the story keeps on chugging, commenting on how our presence in City 17 really
Stirred up the hive.
Barney then alerts Kleiner to how keeping Gordon in one place of the city for too long is too great of a risk, and could potentially
Jeopardize everything we've worked for.
to which Alex adds that,
He's coming with me.
and Kleiner pipes up about how,
This is a red letter day.
and that he plans to inaugurate the new teleport with a double transmission. Meaning that he plans to teleport 2 people, but who and where we don't know. Which leads to this hilarious conversation.
You mean it's working? For real this time? Because I still have nightmares about that cat.
No, there's nothing to be nervous about.
cat?
We've made major strides since then. Major strides.
What cat?
I just love how Alex has never given an answer to her question about the cat. But anyway, following this humorous exchange, Barney then suggests it's time for Gordon to change into something more suitable for his work ahead, to which Kleiner agrees, allowing Barney the honor of showing us exactly what it is we'll be wearing. Entering a passcode to open a locked gate, a hidden area of the room is exposed, revealing none other than our old HEV suit, safely sealed within storage for us. But suddenly, just as Barney is about to unlock it for us, the lights flick on and reveal a head crab right on top of the containment unit. For a moment, the player may panic. As if they have a history with the original Half-Life, they know all too well what those parasitic beasts are capable of. And if they don't, they're still spooked by its sudden appearance and are unsure of what it may be about to do. Both reactions immediately trigger a frightened response within the player, as they are now scared for both Barney and their own survival. But just when it looks like things are about to get ugly, the audience breathes a collective sigh of relief, as after Barney wrestles the creature off his head and throws it onto the ground, Kleiner tells us that this is his pet, Lamar, further elaborating on this by explaining how she's been debeaked and can no longer attach herself to the heads of any human being to control them, effectively making her a tamed head crab. Well, mostly tamed anyway, as although her primal parasitic instincts are now long gone, she's still a bit wild and crazy, as she jumps up a ledge, over several crates, and into an air duct, vanishing from Kleiner's sight once more. Seeing this, Kleiner remarks in frustration that
It'll be another week before I can coax her out of there.
well, Barney tells him that he hopes it'll take even longer for her to be found, to which Alex teases Barney about not being an animal person. The thing I really love about this scene is that it's a very clever example of subversion. It takes something that the player is acquainted with, that being head crabs, sets it up in a situation where the audience thinks they know what to expect, but just when it looks like things are about to go the way we think, the script is suddenly flipped, and we find ourselves discovering something completely new about the story. It's not only a great way to represent something the player is familiar with in a brand new way, but it also introduces those who haven't played the first game before and were previously unaware of these creatures to them, and educates them on what they're capable of in a very funny way. However, now that we've seen all there is to see of Lamar, It's time for us to finally step into our suit once more. As Barney deactivates the storage unit for us, we walk right up to our suit and are suddenly fully equipped with it, as the classic Hazardous environments music plays to hype us up for it. But before Kleiner can fully explain all of the suit's new features to us, both he and Barney realize that time is of the essence, and that they really need to be getting on with their teleportation experiment. Barney also strongly suggests we get our suit charged up, to which Kleiner agrees, and directs us to one of the charging units placed on the wall. As the player does as instructed, Kleiner explains to us that he's modified our suit to draw power from Combine energy outlets, adding that they are plentiful wherever they patrol. Once that's done, Kleiner then proceeds to use a retinal scanner, just like the one seen in Half-Life 1, to open up yet another hidden room within the lab, containing their large-scale teleportation experiment. Before entering the room, however, there's a couple of blink-and-you'll-miss-it details the player can soak in. The first, and most notable of these, is a framed picture of the Black Mesa science team, back from the good old days, with one of the faces in it cut out, as well as various other pieces of media, such as newspaper clippings, sketches, artwork, all littered on a bulletin board. Once Kleiner opens the security door, however, it's clear that the time for dilly-dallying has passed, and we really should be getting on with the experiment. So we do, following Kleiner into the room. Once we're inside, Kleiner climbs up a ladder to get to one of the teleporter's control panels, while Alex actually enters inside it. Kleiner then instructs us to wait near the control box so we can flip the switch when he gives the word. Suddenly, one of the screens within the room turns on to reveal another ally to our cause, attempting to make contact with Dr. Kleiner. Like his peers Barney and Kleiner, this man also began his life as one of the many duplicate NPCs seen throughout Half-Life 1, but has been recreated as a character all of his own as well. From his interaction with Kleiner, we are treated to 3 key pieces of information. For one, that his name is Eli, that Kleiner's first name is Isaac, and that Eli just so happens to be the father of Alex. Together, Eli and Isaac plan to teleport Alex and Gordon to Black Mesa East, Eli's base of operations, so that they can truly begin working on striking back at the Combine. Feeling confident in his teleporter's ability to succeed at its task, Kleiner prepares to send Alex to her father's location, remarking that
Conditions could hardly be more ideal.
Barney isn't convinced though, as he tells Isaac that was exactly what he said last time, before a disaster supposedly struck. Alex, concerned for her safety, once again asks about that cat, but still receives no answer, as Kleiner had already hastened to begin the experiment. But just as all systems were about to go, suddenly something does indeed go wrong, and the teleporter breaks down. Fortunately though, it was not a fatal malfunction, as one of the machine's plugs had merely come loose. The player plugs it back in, and the system begins to run as expected once again. Once that's done, we are given the go-ahead by Isaac to flip the switch, and now the experiment is truly underway. As the teleporter activates, trails of light begin to swirl all around Alex's body, collecting up her matter. As they continue to multiply and consume her entire body, Alex screams out in fright, and then suddenly vanishes. The room goes silent and the TV broadcast from Eli's base goes out. But suddenly, the TV comes back on, and just as everyone fears that Alex's teleportation may have gone awry, the audience breathes a collective sigh of relief as she suddenly appears on the monitor alongside her father. The experiment was a success, and now that we know the machine works, it's time for us to enter it and meet up with Alex and her father. As congratulations are given out to everyone involved with the experiment, Barney decides to playfully tease us with this hilarious line.
Good job, Gordon. Throwing that switch and all. I can see your MIT education really pays for itself.
However, his clever little zinger is soon cut short by Isaac, telling him to get into position so that we can join Alex at Eli's lab. Upon our entry to the teleporter, everything seems to be running smoothly like before, when all of a sudden, a grate attached to an air duct falls down and disconnects one of the cables attached to the machine. And who is responsible for this, you ask? None other than Kleiner's pet Lamar, who fell through the bottom of that very same air duct she had entered into before. As the teleporter begins to malfunction, suddenly Lamar leaps at our head, and we are taken to a wasteland far outside the confines of Isaac's lab, before being pulled right back inside where we were before. Suddenly, we are then whisked off to our intended destination, but are still unable to exit the teleporter, as the state of matter we are in is currently unstable. After that, we're portaled over to the office of none other than Dr. Breen himself, clearly startled by our current presence. Just before he can do anything about it, though, we are once again sent back into Kleiner's lab, but not for long, as we cycle through Eli's HQ and Breen's office yet again, thus 100% confirming and alerting our presence to the Combine. And just when things couldn't seem to get any more chaotic, we get pulled under the water, where a giant alien fish lunges out at us, intent on devouring us whole. But luckily, before we can become his afternoon snack, we are teleported to temporary safety right outside Isaac's lab, and whereupon noting our presence, both Isaac and Barney tell us to run away from there and make our escape, while Isaac shuts down the teleport, and Barney tells us he'll meet us outside. Now that the machine is off and we are free, we immediately make a break for the nearest exit around the outskirts of the building. Once we're there, true to his word, Barney exits the lab to meet with us outside, informing Gordon that the Citadel is on high alert, and now that every Combine unit within City 17 is hunting for us, our best chance of escape to Eli's lab is through the canals, which Alex mentioned earlier, adding that Resistance-allied refugees will provide aid where they can. Unfortunately, though, Barney himself is unable to travel with us, as he must look after Dr. Kleiner. But to give us a little leg up and provide for Gordon's safety on the road ahead, he supplies us with a little friend of ours, the one and only trusty Crowbar. Wishing us luck on our journey, he rushes back inside, and now the game truly begins. So now that we have reached the end of the game's intro, I think it is time to recap all that we have learned, both from the information it provides and how said information makes the opening an incredibly effective one. In just a 22-minute time frame, the player already knows absolutely everything they need to know about the world and its characters in order to get the story started and to truly care about it. Case in point, we now know that the Combine move people from place to place constantly so they can never become organized or form attachments to anyone, do not allow civilians to have personal possessions or belongings of any kind, are implied to be drugging water supplies, regularly interrogate and apprehend people, even without probable cause, consistently perform acts of abuse and brutality upon humanity in order to keep them in line, control the Earth by way of a proxy dictator, that being the Earth Administrator Dr. Breen, deprive better nourishment from the human population to encourage them to participate within their horrific system, infringe upon people's safety and security by taking pictures of their faces without their consent, routinely perform unreasonable searches and seizures within densely populated areas, and, arguably worst of all, have taken away humanity's right and ability to reproduce, effectively ensuring that the current generation of humans is the very last and will eventually die out. In the short time that all of this information about our enemy is established, we now have an incredibly clear picture of just how horrific and oppressive the system which the Combine have employed on Earth truly is, making us both truly loathe and despise them, while becoming incredibly eager to do whatever we can to help relinquish their grip upon the planet, and free mankind from their tyranny. And all of this happens in just a 22-minute segment of the game. Wow! But that's not all that the intro manages to accomplish within that time frame. We also get some key information and development with regards to the good guys' side of things as well. We learn how the Resistance is using inside intel gathered from one of their agents, working undercover within Civil Protection, to plan their strategies against the Combine, and how they're helping innocent civilians escape from City 17 on foot through the old canals to find sanctuary within Eli Vance's lab. A piece of information that becomes quite critical to the player, as it's not only the setting of the very first level, but also the route to ensure our own survival. But even beyond adding context like that, the intro even goes so far as to add completely new characterization to many members of its core cast that completely changes the way we look at the game's characters. Barney is no longer just another ordinary security guard NPC, but instead a playfully sarcastic yet strong and brave leader within the Resistance. Kleiner is no longer that one scientist you'd see making random conversation about office work or scared out of his wits about an alien invasion. Now he's a softly spoken yet highly intelligent man, putting his scientific knowledge to good use to ensure that mankind has a brighter future. And Eli is no longer that one stock scientist character you'd occasionally see while making your way through the facilities of Black Mesa, but instead a warm yet driven man who's spearheading the entire Resistance movement. This kind of storytelling is, in my mind, what truly sets apart Half-Life 2 from many of its contemporaries within the first-person shooter genre, as not many FPS games really take the time to truly delve into and immerse the player within the world of their stories. At least, not to the extent that Half-Life 2 does. In Half-Life 2, pretty much every single detail is important. Everything matters. Everything builds off of each other to add some new piece of the puzzle we weren't seeing before, that further enhances our interest and investment within the game's plot. And it accomplishes all this without bombarding the player, or feeling like a severe case of information overload, by integrating it naturally into the gameplay. It's entirely up to the player whether or not they want to discover all this by how they choose to interact with the world. Most of this information, excluding scenes involving the main cast, can be completely missed if the player chooses not to take the time to soak it all in. But if you choose to do that, you're really missing out on discovering a far greater experience than the one you expected to find when you initially booted up the game. So why would you want to skip over all that? It's this kind of attention to detail that makes many of Valve's games so special and memorable, even after many years since their release. It's also why, after nearly 2 decades since Half-Life 2's release, people are still clamoring for the elusive third game to finally be released, no matter how likely or unlikely that may seem. Because Half-Life 2 made them care, and that is what good storytelling is supposed to do. I'm really hoping that this secret project Valve is currently working on, codenamed Project White Sands or HLX, turns out to indeed be Half-Life 3, as many fans have theorized, so that the fantastic story established within this series can finally reach its proper conclusion. But until that day comes, we still have both fan interpretations of its ending and all of the prior entries in the story to keep us eager for more. In the meantime, however, this is where I get off.